Hey everyone, hope you're having a great week so far and are ready to dive into another Krita video today. We're going to be diving into the basics of vector tools and shapes, with the episode after this showcasing how to use those tools in an artwork. First of all, you're going to be greeted with this page when you first load into your new file. Notice how your first two layers by default will be a locked background layer and a paint layer. Bear in mind that you can use vector tools on paint layers, but they will not be editable on paint layers as shown here. The opposite of this is not true. You cannot use paint tools on vector layers. So, from the get-go, you're going to have to make a decision. Is your artwork going to be vector or rasterized as a basis? As our artwork today will be vector based, I will delete this paint layer and replace it with a vector layer. Just to show you what happens when you try to use a raster tool, which is a drawing or paint tool, on a vector layer, here you go. You get a little pop-up reminding you that you cannot. As I don't use the shape, polygon or line tool that often in my vector work, I'm just going to demonstrate them here so you can see how they work, along with the tools that I also do use. Just before we get into these, here is a quick tip. All vector tools can and mostly do use the settings you have attached to your brush tool, whether it is the colour or the weight of the line you are making, so it is easiest to change the settings of your brush tool first before making any marks with your vector tools. Despite this, you can change these settings in the tool options of each tool after the fact too, as long as you are using the vector tools on a vector layer. Now that is out of the way, there are 8 basic vector tools in Krita, and they are as follows. 1. In my opinion, the most important vector tool is the Edit Shapes tool, as this allows you to edit every vector node and tool after the fact, and is very useful if you need to manipulate any nodes or lines. To see a demonstration of this tool, I will use it in the following tools. 2. The Line tool. This tool is helpful to create simple single line marks between two nodes as shown here. To use this tool, you click, hold and drag to create your line. This line can be edited using the Edit Shapes tool, just like with every other tool in this list. Here you will see how the Edit Shapes tool works. As you can see, you can manipulate the line work using the handles that are attached to the nodes. The handles specifically tend to affect the angle of the line, whereas the nodes themselves will affect where the line actually goes. 3 and 4. The Rectangle tool and the Ellipse tool. I put these tools together as they work the same way, just with differing shapes. One for a rectangle and the other with circles of varying ratios. Click, hold and drag to create your shape. You can use Ctrl, Shift or Alt to test how they alter the usage of this tool. Remember that the brush tool size will dictate the size of your line stroke, and then after the fact you can use the Edit Shapes tool to manipulate the shapes. 5. The Polygon tool is where the shape tools start to get very interesting, as you can make any straight line shape you can imagine with this tool. To use this tool, you simply just click where you would like to add a corner and then continue on to your next corner. To end your usage of the tool, click on the starting position, shift click or press enter. This tool always has to end by closing the shape, whether you close it yourself by clicking on the starting node, or it will close the shape itself by just connecting up in a straight line the starting and final node. Again, you can use the Edit Shapes tool to create any curves, move nodes or edit the shape in any way you like. 6. The Polyline tool works exactly how the Polygon tool works, but you don't have to close the shape at the end. It will end as a line with a beginning and an end. As with the Polygon tool, the Edit Shapes tool will be useful if you wish to create any curves or move any nodes. What's helpful is that you can hold Shift to move multiple nodes at once. 7. The Bezier Curve tool is the tool I use the most. This tool is a combination of the Polyline tool, Polygon tool and Edit Shapes tool all in one, as it allows you to create straight lines and shapes, but if you click and drag, you can create curves on the fly. I like to use the Bezier Curve tool to simply plan my shapes and lines out, putting curves where I need them, and then with the Edit Shapes tool, I'll go in afterwards to clean up and make the shapes and lines look how I want them to. 8. And finally, the Freehand Path tool. This is the closest to a brush you will get in vector work with the current set of basic tools. You can use it with your stylus or mouse to draw out any shape you like. The warning I would give with this tool is that it can sometimes end up simplifying your shape too much if you leave the optimize setting box checked without first setting and testing to see what numerical value works best for you. I tend to just leave it unchecked and just make sure I am confident with my line work, but the negative of not having the box checked is that you will end up with tens of unnecessary nodes clogging up your work. At the end of the day, I suggest experimenting with the tool options and settings to see what works best for you. Now that we have tested and seen all of the basic vector tools, here is a quick tip before testing them out on a real piece of artwork. Using the Edit Shapes tool, you can click and drag over your line work, or just click on the line work itself to bring up the nodes on that layer. Once you have done this, you will see the nodes involved in that shape or line. If you have used the Bezier curve tool or have any differing lines in your shape, curve versus straight, you will notice that the nodes are different shapes. A square node represents a symmetric point, where your handles will move with each other to keep symmetry, allowing for an easier use of smooth curves or transitions. A diamond node represents a line node, where only straight lines occur, or a curve node where you can use the separate handles of the node to manipulate the node into creating an imperfect or less smooth curve. A circular node works similarly to the symmetric point, but it makes a perfectly smooth curve. To change these modes on the nodes, you can either cycle through them by holding Ctrl and left clicking, or you can just right click on the node to get a list. When you right click, you also get the options to break at point, which can be done anywhere in the line or shape where you right clicked, or you can right click on a node and remove a node, which will not break the line or shape, but will remove the effect and position of that node instead. If you wish to add a node, you can double click on the line work where you want to add a node, and a node will show up with the characteristics of the current line work already in place. Now that we have gone through the basics of vector tools and shapes in Krita, I will leave you there to play around and test out all of the different ways you can work with vectors in Krita. I will see you in the next one, where we will draw together using the tools that we practiced with in this episode. So I will see you in the next one, where I will create a vector speed drawing of Spider-Man's Miles Morales in this 10-part mini-series on the basics of art and animation in Krita.